Hello. As some of you know, I've been stripping a 1275 Midget gearbox, which is going to be fitted in Gracie, my Morris Minor, when we eventually get her on the road. I've never stripped a gearbox before, so it's all new. Everything is out. The lay gear should have a rod running through, but obviously that's been removed, so the lay gear is just in the bottom of the casing. But I can't get that out until I get this next piece out, which is this gear here, which is part of the input shaft. It's been a bit of a pain, to be honest with you. The input shaft has a clip on it, and I've managed to pull it so the bearing is free of the casing. But my issue is that this rearmost gear is catching on the casing, so I don't know whether that splits from, well, it must split for the gear to come out. I'm looking at it through the shaft in the rear, and let me get something to point with. So I'm thinking that in there is the edge of the other shaft. So if I manage to drift that out, but I just don't want to damage this casing. So I'm taking some advice from an expert. So hence why I've just left that for now. So I won't do any more to the casing. It just needs a bit of cleaning up, so I'll put it to one side for now. But what I did want to show you is when people say about these gearboxes, when they're taking them apart, they said there's an issue with these ball bearings. I don't know if you can see them there. But this bearing sits inside that, and it's held in by little springs and ball bearings. And people say you take them apart and these springs and ball bearings go west, never to be seen again. So this is the gear in question. I don't know. I haven't got a clue what it's called. All I know is that it's held together. In total there's 4 pieces. So we have what I believe is called a balk ring. Then we have one on the other side. So we have 2 balk rings, and then in the centre then we have this bearing which splits. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but basically these are the ball bearings, and they're on springs, and around the circumference of this bearing you have little holes. So that spring will fit in that hole, and then the ball bearing sits on top of that. I can't even get hold of it now, but the ball bearing sits on top of that, and then the whole shebang then sits back into that gear. But what happens is when people, or what I've been told, when people try and split them, the ball bearings go west and never to be seen again. So what I've done, or what I did on this occasion, you can actually feel it when you if you get hold of the bearing, you can feel it. There's some resistance, and you just as you come over the top of the ball bearing, you can feel it, because the ball bearing sits in this little groove in the centre, and you can just feel the resistance on the spring as you lift it over. So what I did, I covered it with a cloth, I opened it up inside the cloth, so put my rag over it, felt the resistance, open it up, and you can hear the 3 springs pop, and lo and behold, there they are, not all the way across the garage, which is good. I've also got the main shaft off of out of the gearbox. the intention was to replace, the reason I'm stripping it down is to replace the bearings, and obviously gaskets that have been in there. This gear, which I believe is first gear, I stand corrected, but I believe it's first gear. What happens when people use the gearbox and they put it into first gear, this gear slides forward, and sometimes they over select it, and again you can just see there's another ball, another hole there which just holds a spring. Again, they're the same kind of things. Those three springs, they all sit in around the circumference of this, along with an indent, which is that little fella there. He sits in one of the holes as well. But I think what happens is when people select first gear, or they drive the car they drive the car holding it in first gear or pushing it forward, it has a tendency to push that thing forward, push the gear forward, then these little balls pop out and you can't get it back out of gear. That's what happens sometimes. So in order to do that, when you put these rods back in, you measure it, and I don't know which one it is at the moment, but you put a little bush, either a little brass, easy for me to say, brass bush, on the end of the rod, which stops you from pushing it forward, and hopefully that will solve that problem. But as I say, the reason I've stripped it is to replace the bearings. But to be honest with you, I've listened to these bearings, and rather than going through all the palaver removing these, there's no issues with them whatsoever. So I think I'm going to leave the main shaft, leave everything built up as it is, and put it back together. I will change that bearing on the bell housing. I will change that one, because that one's rather grumbly. But the remainder of the gears seem fine. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So yeah, that's what we're up to now. But I just said I'd show you that because people seem to have issues with that, and it's, quite honest with you, scared me to death. But I just put a cloth over it, and it came apart. And likewise, the one on the shaft, I just put a cloth around it and just popped it, and out they popped. So that's it. Yeah, the gearbox itself, well, I've got all the bits are stored in there, so hopefully they'll all go back the way they come off. I've cleaned up the housings. Yeah, so they're quite clean. This has to be taken off. There's an oil seal in there. I don't know if you can see it, but I think the original ones just had the felt, and the newer ones have a rubber oil seal, but there is one in there, but it is very hard. So that's the tail shaft. So in effect, that's going back towards the prop shaft. So yeah, there's another seal to go in there. Everything else is done, all nice and clean, and get new gaskets and get everything back up and going. This is the reverse gear, and its shaft. Again, there are some marks around it, but again, when you look at the actual gears themselves, they seem solid. There's no chips or anything in them, so they'll be cleaned up and going back in. That's the lay shaft. Now people say you can get a toughened lay shaft from, I believe it's Mini Sport, so I'm going to replace that lay shaft. There are some running marks on there, but all in all it seems in good order. But I am going to get a toughened lay shaft from Mini Sport, I think they are. That's the distance tube, speedo drive, that all seems to be okay. Some spacers, the thrust bearing, the thrust washer from the lay shaft gears. Oh yeah, I think that's about it. So much for the big gearbox rebuild. I've got there and decided that all this lot doesn't need to come apart. So I feel like taking it apart though, just to see how it all goes together, but I've been advised against it, so yeah, I'll take it from there. Oh, whilst I'm on, my discs arrived. My grinding discs. Obviously I'm not doing any grinding at the moment, but they come and they've got a temperature at which to be stored. Oh, unfortunately, they're just going to be stored in my whole garage. But these are there, so they're 3M. I don't know if you can see that. Cubitron 2 from 3M. They're supposed to be absolutely awesome bits of kit. I think what happens is these grind, and then the little shards break, and it keeps the grinding disc sharp. But I've got enough to be going on with anyway, so hopefully I shouldn't have to buy any more grinding discs. So yeah, that's where we're up to. So now that I've got my discs, I can get back to once this gearbox is put back together, I can get back to doing some more bodywork. Right, okay then. Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.